Sådär, det är dags för Årets Statistikfrämjare 2023. Det här priset delas ut årligen i samband med Statistikfrämjandets årsmöte och tilldelas då en eller flera personer verksamma i eller anknutna till Sverige som gjort en slagkraftig insats på statistikområdet som under det senaste året givit publik uppmärksamhet. Insatsen kan bestå av en innovativ metod, en smart analys eller på ett framgångsrikt sätt ha utmanat en etablerad sanning. Jag vill be vår ordförande Nancy komma fram så att hon kan läsa upp den motivering som har angetts.
Det är väldigt spännande det här tycker jag, väldigt roligt. Årets statistikfrämjare har utmärkt sig genom sitt långsiktiga arbete med att införa den nu antagna masterutbildningen i biostatistik och datavetenskap. Masterutbildningen är unik då den har integrerat 2 olika ämnen, biostatistik och datavetenskap, och den ges gemensamt av Karolinska Institutet, KTH och Stockholms Universitet i samverkan. Personen har bedrivit ett gediget arbete för att synliggöra biostatistik och biostatistikerns roll inom medicinsk forskning under en lång tid. Hen har bland annat varit delaktig i att bygga upp biostatistikgruppen på Institutionen för medicinsk epidemiologi och biostatistik vid Karolinska Institutet och betonat vikten av en rik forskningsmiljö i biostatistik. Den här personen har arbetat för att stärka biostatistikerns roll i Sverige och Karolinska Institutet, till exempel under sin tid som lärarrepresentant i konsistoriet 2019-2021. Personen har skapat betydelsefulla träffpunkter för biostatistiker, både internt inom Karolinska Institutet såväl som i ett vidare sammanhang genom exempelvis arbetet med Stockholm Biostatistics Network Event. Med det så vill jag välkomna Årets Statistikfrämjare Paul Dickman.
Tack! Ja, du får lämna.
Ja, jag vill överlämna.
Tackar.
Ja.
Tack, ännu en blås.
Ja, tackar.
Stort grattis, välförtjänt.
Tack.
Välkommen fram.
Jag ska ta fram.
Tack. Stort tack till Statistikfrämjandet, till ni som nominerade mig och till ni som valde mig till det här utmärkelsen. Jag hedrar. Och tack till ni som har stött mig under den här resan. Jag ska hålla ett längre tacktal under det här. Jag kommer byta till engelska om det är okej. Okej. Så jag har 30 minuter tilldelat mig om jag har... Okej, hur kan jag ta det här till hel skärm? Hur gör man? Kan jag trycka på Ctrl L? Funkar det? Hur tar man typ? Hur gör man det till full screen?
Vill du ha det sida upp sida?
Ja.
Där har den. Så, där.
Perfekt, tack.
Så, varsågod.
So I titled this Developing Academic Biostatistics at KI, for that was sort of the focus of the motivation. And then I'll focus on sort of my thoughts and work surrounding the motivation in this talk. Obviously, I have a lot of people to thank, but before doing that, I thought I might give a little bit of what I see as the background. And for example, you might think, I think the first sentence in the motivation was developing a master's program. You might think, well, that's not special. Other people have developed master's programs. There's literally people in this room who've developed and run master's programs. So what's so special about this master's program? So I will give my thoughts on why I think it's special, and sort of why is developing biostatistics at KI so challenging. And I wanted to sort of start by mentioning those things before I to give a background to the people that I'd like to thank and acknowledge. And then, of course, future directions. Our journey is far from over. So where do we go from here? Firstly, a little bit about me. So I was born in Sydney, Australia, studied mathematics and statistics in Newcastle, Australia. Newcastle is an industrial town, like Newcastle, England, which is relevant for some things I'll mention later. It's like many industrial towns, it's no longer an industrial town, but 30 years ago, it was an industrial town. Industrial statistics was very big. There was a big consulting group who worked primarily with industrial statistics. And I sort of worked in that area. Primarily, I worked in health services research, but we were taking the ideas sort of from industrial process control and applying them in health services research, sort of the industrial ideas of quality improvement, process control. But I also did a little bit of experimental design in industry. And then I was about to actually start a PhD in industrial process control. And then other things got in the way, and I ended up in Sweden doing a project in biostatistics. The plan was that I'd come for 10 months as an exchange student, and I enjoyed it here. So yeah, the rest is history, as they say. So I joined my current department, which was called MEP, Medical Epidemiology, in 1999. This was a cancer epidemiology department. Hans-Olof Adami was the chair. He moved the department from Uppsala to Stockholm after arguing with Uppsala University over money. He just packed up his department and said, yeah, I'm taking my bat and my ball and going to play in another town. And so we already had a cancer epidemiology unit at KI, so we called it medical epidemiology. But then through the efforts of primarily Uni Palmgren and others in developing biostatistics, who I'll talk about later, we changed our name to Medical Epidemiology and Biostatistics. So my academic interests, primarily development and application of methods for population-based cancer survival analysis, primarily relative survival, net survival. I have a general interest in statistical aspects of the design and analysis of epidemiological studies. I've sort of transitioned more from being a biostatistician to being an epidemiologist these days. And then the tradition has gone further from being a researcher to being an administrator. So I do a lot of administration. And director of the master's program director of the master's program is one thing. But I've always had a focus on building infrastructure, building scientific infrastructure, building biostatistics, but research infrastructure in general. I sort of worked to build up our applied biostatistics group, our consulting group. And then together with others, building infrastructure has always been a big part of what interests me. So I've always been a big fan of Rodney Dangerfield, whose catchphrase was, "I don't get no respect." There should be a smiley face on this. but yeah, it's sort of one of the reasons, as I see, for this, what do you call it, award, is that building biostatistics at Karolinska Institutet is and has not been easy. Now, I don't want to get into an argument of whose life is the hardest. You might remember the Monty Python sketch. You know, there was 30 of us living in a shoebox in the middle of Rome. That's not where I want to go. I do understand that all statisticians, and in fact, every person in any field feels disrespected. I certainly know that in statisticians working in industry with engineers do not get the respect from engineers that they feel they deserve. I've sort of had engineers say, like, go away with your fancy factorial designs. We know how to do experiments. Yeah, we'll just twiddle a few knobs. So I'm well aware that this is not confined to medical statisticians. And I mean, I've worked in other medical statistics, but Karolinska, the medical researchers at Karolinska seem to be particularly self-righteous and obstinate. And are we recording this? All right. All right. I don't think they'll go onto our webpage. And sort of having said that, I mean, sort of researchers at Karolinska Institutet have a reputation for being arrogant. But even if we're not as good as we think we are, or we claim we are, objectively, KI is a leading medical university. Sort of, why does it not have a strong history of biostatistics? Is something I've reflected upon over a long time. One of the challenges is that we're a single faculty university. We don't have physicists and engineers and computer scientists pushing, for example, the development of IT, pushing the methodological developments. That's definitely a challenge, particularly in the modern era of developing biostatistics. But then, I visited other single faculty universities. The London School of Hygiene, basically, you can list a whole row of famous biostatisticians. And I mean, it doesn't have mathematics and physics and computer scientists. Sandra Ellerunter and I visited the Mayo Clinic. They have a history of biostatistics. So I'd actually love to there must have been statisticians, 100 years ago who wanted to work in medicine and went and spoke to the medical researchers and just thought, no, this is too hard. If anyone does sort of have insight into that, I'd like to know. But it's interesting. When I graduated in 1997 with a PhD, there were 2 other PhD biostatisticians at KI. I've once again forgotten Jon Erdvik in my earlier. So Jon, of course, was a professor of biostatistics. I don't think you were there in 1997, no. But I mean, I think I mentioned that Arvid Welander was the first sort of Swedish-trained professor of biostatistics at Karolinska Institutet. Jon was, of course, the first. You're a professor of medical statistics, I believe. Same thing. I'm sorry for forgetting to mention you there. But nevertheless, and actually, I'd be very interested in your thoughts on this later, Jon. Sort of, just why are KI researchers sort of less receptive to bias? Why is it so hard? And I mean, this has been something that we've been fighting against. Even today, many of our senior colleagues sort of don't understand that biostatistics is a science. It's surprising. I mean, people can understand that you can do research in Swedish language, in anything at all, but they can't recognize that you can do research in statistics. The number of people who a number of my colleagues who think, well, isn't biostatistics solved? Haven't you sort of discovered everything? What more is there to learn? Is fascinating. We nevertheless have a great many colleagues who do respect biostatistics, and I'll get back to that. Why was it so hard to start a master's program in biostatistics? Well, it was a combination of the lack of respect and understanding of biostatistics, but also the tak belopp, the ceiling. Unlike many other universities, KI trains more students than what we are paid for. So in order to start a new program, we have to cut an existing program. And sort of the opportunities for starting new programs are extremely limited. And then when there is an opportunity to start a new program, biostatistics doesn't get priority. We were actually extremely fortunate because several years ago, the Stockholm trio was formed. Karolinska Institutet, Stockholm University, and KTH Royal Institute of Technology. And then, so there was political pressure on our university to do something in collaboration. And our university leaders couldn't think of anything to do. And so they thought, well, that Paul Dickman's been nagging us for 15 years. Maybe he can start a master's program. So it was sort of in order to fulfill their obligations of having an activity within Stockholm Trio. And then they thought, well, only a third of the students get accounted to us. So we're taking 30 students, so that we can allocate 10 students to Paul and shut him up. I'm being a little bit unfair. But it's sort of this was one of the reasons why we got the program started. Turned out it was absolutely fantastic. The collaboration with KTH and Stockholm University has been wonderful for so many reasons. This new program is so much better than if we had have done it on our own. But we often hear our colleagues say, well, biostatisticians are so important. They help us do our research, as if they're the only ones who do research and we don't. And then, I mean, it was fascinating. I think I mentioned, and here I have to find a period where Jon wasn't there. But, I'd argue to the leadership, look, all of our professors of biostatistics were trained from abroad. And it's not sustainable. It was obvious to me that we needed to start training biostatisticians, but they just couldn't see it. But we've together, we've overcome those obstacles. So on to the thank yous and acknowledgements, having sort of given that basis. And I'm obviously honored and humbled to have been selected. I'm delighted that the importance of developing biostatistical science has been recognized. And I'm deeply grateful to the Swedish Statistical Society, Statistikfrämjandets, those who nominated me and those who've supported me. I have not done this alone, so I hope the many people who've been on this journey with me sort of view this award as recognition of our joint efforts. Our journey's far from complete, and I'd like to talk sort of, in fact, it's barely just started. So I'll talk later about what the next steps are and why this is so important. I think I did a little bit of that this morning. I cannot name everyone I'd like to thank, but I will definitely single out a few people. Firstly, and at the very top of the list is Uni Palmgren. Isaac Newton said we stand on the shoulders of giants. I'm not suggesting that I'm in any way comparable to Isaac Newton, but Uni Palmgren is an absolute giant. And those of us who work with biostatistics at Karolinska Institutet sort of owe her our job and our wonderful work environment. And I'll mention Hans-Olof Adami before coming back to uni. Hans-Olof Adami was the chair of the Department of Clinical Epidemiology. In Uppsala, he worked with Reinhold Bergström in Uppsala. So Hans-Olof Adami was one of the few clinical cancer epidemiologists who'd worked with a sort of, actually, I won't say that. Hans-Olof Adami had the experience working with a professional biostatistician, unlike many of his colleagues. And then, the way departments at Karolinska Institutet are highly autonomous, the researchers get to sit around and decide in what field will we announce our next professorship. So the cancer epidemiologists sat around, and Hans-Olof said, we should spend our very scarce resources on a professor of biostatistics. No one else in the room thought that, but Hans-Olof was such a strong figure that he got to do as he wanted. Many of the people who were around at the time said, well, I thought that was crazy. We could, we could have got a geneticist. We could have got another clinician. Why would we spend our money on a statistician? Hans-Olof did it. And how many minutes have I spoken for so far, Matthias? All right, okay, good. And then, so Hans-Olof spent the department's scarce resources on Uni Palmgren. Her employment initially was as professor of biostatistics at Stockholm University. That was in 1997, I believe. And then in 1999, she became guest professor of biostatistics. And then, Uni's mission was to do great research, develop biostatistics. So she sort of subsequently recruited Mary Riley, Udi Pavatan to the department. She got grants for developing biostatistics, research, and education. She got money to send our doctoral students to Harvard. We didn't have a doctoral program, so our doctoral students got to go abroad to get their education. Annika was around somewhere then. You can tell what your part in this was. But she sort of, the initial developments were very much led by her. I joined the department around the same time as a newly graduated PhD biostatistician. Rino Belocco was the other PhD biostatistician. This was all at MEB. Subsequently, later on, Jon joined the Department of Medicine Solna. Matteo Bottai was recruited to the Department of Environmental Medicine. But this was, when did you join KI, Jon? 2005. So this was sort of 5 years later, as sort of Uni had sort of started up the group. And I'd also like to thank the sort of many clinical scientists who've supported biostatistics. These were the people who sat on the central committees and sort of argued that money should be given to biostatistics. Per Hull, I particularly remember. Per Hull, back in the 90s, collaborated with Fredrik Renat, and they published a paper where Fredrik was last author. And in medicine, the last author is the most prestigious position. And it's the last authorship publications that you need to get the grant money. And so people said, like, why the hell would you give a last authorship to a statistician? Statisticians don't need it. And Per said, well, he's the guy who did all of the work. He's the guy who made the biggest scientific contribution. We needed support from the clinical scientists to help convince the other clinical scientists. There's many, many other names there who've sort of, supported us by sitting on committees and, helping us get money and support. Therese and Sandra, I put on the same line because they're very much, they're sitting together today. They did their PhDs together in biostatistics. They were recruited to our department at a similar time. And as they, well, I wish they were inseparable because I only get to work closely with one of them at the moment. Well, I get to work with both of them closely. But you know, as far as statisticians go, the statisticians that I've worked with, it's Therese, Sandra, and Aaron who've been the ones who've had a passion for developing infrastructure. Therese in particular has been heavily involved in sort of everything to do with building biostatistics, but particularly with the new master's program. Therese sits on the program group with me, is one of the course directors. So Therese has been very heavily involved in that. Sandra has been especially heavily involved in Clinicum, developing infrastructures at KI for methodological support, and also being a sort of an advocate for biostatistics and developing biostatistics in general. And together we have our plans for further developments and taking over KI. Erin is no longer with us. She's not dead. She's in Denmark. But she was also a whirlwind of wanting to make things better. Also, all of my biostatistical colleagues. And then it was mentioned in the motivation, being the faculty representative to the board. This was a massive thing for me personally. This is more a sort of an outcome of our efforts, I would say. Like any organization, Karolinska Institutet is highly political. The board is where the big decisions are taken, not least the budget. And there's a lot of politics. So at KI, we basically have, there's geographic politics, we have our different geographic campuses, and there's constant battles between preclinical research, clinical research, and epidemiology for money and resources. And so the three faculty representatives were usually sort of equally divided between the factions. So when there was someone from a completely unknown minor faction, biostatistics, was voted to the board, raised a lot of eyebrows. So that, and I sort of, as cruel as I was to my clinical colleagues, they nevertheless elected me to this position. So there was, or at least a proportion of them did. So there's a proportion who are sort of very supportive. There's still a large proportion we need to convince. And of course, one of the things that the Biostatistics College have done one by one, convince our clinical colleagues of what biostatistics is. But there's still more work to be done there. So what's next? Well, I mentioned some of this morning, and it's one of the limiting factors is we need more staff. We only have a limited time, but develop doctoral education in biostatistics. Uni was very focused on developing doctoral education and got money and sort of started a collaborative doctoral program. I always put my emphasis, I thought master's education has to come first. And now we can work more on developing doctoral education. And this, of course, it's going to have to be done with other universities, both nationally and internationally. We're too small. Further develop the master's program, especially the elective courses. Again, we're small. We're going to have to collaborate with doctoral education and with professional development. Further strengthen ties with industry. The master's program gives us a basis for having people from industry and government authorities come and talk to our students, come and teach, come and interact with us. Further strengthen the ties between biostatistics, mathematical statistics, statistics and data science. This is extremely important. This was one of uni's key areas, trying to get mathematical statistics and biostatistics together. We're going to continue that work. And then, as I mentioned, Yeah, keeping data science and statisticians talking, statisticians talking to each other. And then spoke about these network events. So this was basically me inviting people to come and have a drink with me and our colleagues. And so you're all welcome on the 4th of April to Karolinska Institutet. Come and listen to some presentations, because my university said I'm not allowed to buy you drinks unless I force you to listen to lectures. So together with my co-organizers, I think we put together a sort of a very nice program. The keynote speaker is Chris Holmes from Oxford, who recently wrote a paper in New England Journal of Medicine, when medical statistics meets artificial intelligence. So we have 2 hours of talks on that theme. Then we can drink and mingle. And this is the 4th such network event that we've had. So with the aim of getting not just biostatisticians, but bioinformaticians, computational biologists, data scientists together. And then I think a lot about, where do we want to be in the future? I would say when I retire in 10 years, at least 10 full-time professors of biostatistics at Karolinska Institutet I'd like to see. We're also working very heavily on sort of collaborative structures for biostatistics, a sort of virtual department we're aiming for, because we'll never get an actual department due to KI politics. So that's in 10 years. And then, of course, in 25 years, when Professors Andersson and Eloranta retire, they can tell us later about their plans for that. So in summary, thank you very much for this award. It means a massive amount to me. And the things that you mentioned in the motivation mean a massive amount to me. And in particular, not just for what we have achieved, but the springboard for what we can achieve. And I look forward to working together with all of you to further develop statistics and biostatistics. Thank you very much. Is there time for Jan or Annika who I mentioned to comment, or if we run out of time?
Yeah, no, we have another 12 minutes before they kick us out. So impromptu presentations, anyone?
We're very happy to work at MedAI. I think it was a very good environment to be a statistician and really being able to do biostatistics.
Use the mic.
I should use the mic, which I was very happy to work at MedAI, and I came from Mid Sweden University, where I have been like the only statistician at the Department of Health. So I was so happy being in an environment with several statisticians and having these biostatisticians working together. So I was important place to be, and very happy to working with.
Yeah.
So yes, I måste binda.
Ni får prata svenska om ni vill. Det var bra som vi kan.
Jag kan prata svenska. Det går bra. Hur som helst så har jag också bakgrund då på Karolinska under ett antal år, som Paul sa tidigare. Jag började 2005 och jag var där till 2016. Och under den här tiden, det måste ha varit runt Anders Hamsten hade precis blivit rektor. Då träffades Paul och jag och Matteo Bottei och diskuterade kring ett PhD-program för biostatistiker. Att det kändes liksom att vi här i Sverige var långt efter framförallt USA. Där man har ett mycket intimare samarbete där man har core facilities för biostatistik, och då är kanske data science och epidemiology och bioinformatics med i det här paketet. Och det för att vi hade väl alla den idén att för att göra god forskning så räcker det inte bara att se på den medicinska, att vi är spjutspets där. Vi måste också använda nya statistiska metoder, så vi måste även vara en spjutspets där. Och då behöver vi ett PhD-program. Men det var mycket motarbetat från tunga professorer inom den medicinska fakulteten så på Karolinska, så att tyvärr, och det fanns liksom inte heller pengar för ett sånt här program. Det var väl vad jag har att säga om det här, så jag bara gratulera Paul, du som i alla fall har fått till ett masterprogram. För jag förstår hur svårt det måste ha varit att övertyga de här herrar medicinska professorer. Och det är likadant, nu har jag ju erfarenheten då från Uppsala och medicinfarmaceutiska fakulteten, att statistikerna, de är alltså ungefär degraderade till att vara teknisk personal. Det anses på något sätt som en teknikalitet det de gör. Det är medicinarna som gör forskningen. Och det är någonting som vi måste verka för att ändra på i Sverige.
Ja, precis. Så, och ja, vi har att utveckla forskarutbildning, det har vi framför oss och det vill vi verkligen göra. Det är faktiskt det är svårare att inrätta ett mastersprogram, för att forskarutbildning kan man driva i smyg. Om man är beredd att undervisa utan pengar, man kan köra forskarutbildningskurser utan att någon behöver godkänna dem. Och det är det som vi gör. Medan ett masterprogram, då måste man ha ett beslut från ovanpå att inrätta ett program. Så därför är ett mastersprogram ännu svårare. Det finns andra utmaningar för forskarutbildningen, inte minst antal doktorander. Och sen det enda sättet att öka antal doktorander är att öka antal professorer, som man inte kan göra över natt. Så och därför har vi tänkt på, hur kan vi öka antal professorer eller lektorer eller handledare som kan handleda doktorander, så om vi har kritisk massa till ett forskarutbildningskurser. Och sen det uppenbara, vad säger man, the obvious answer är att samarbeta med andra lärosäten.
Fantastiskt. Stort tack och grattis återigen Paul. Tack även för lite mer insikt i det arbete som har legat bakom det här masterprogrammet. Så gratulerar och grattis alla biostatistiker.